From the shores of the Aegean Sea to Cleveland, Ohio, we bring you the Freedom Hub's Health, Biz, and Politics Cash Patient Free Market Program. It's Wednesday. Hi, I'm Jim Graypeck. My co-host I'm joined by today is Jeffrey Cantor, the originator. And if you're new to the program, let me take you over, do a little screen share, and let's stop that and bring you to our website. Your-mp.com stands for Your Marketplace for Health, Wealth, and Freedom. And if you come over to the Your Media Hub tab, click on that. It will take you to the page where you can see who we have coming up, our guests, our topics. Wednesday, today is the Health, Biz, and Politics. And on Thursday, it is the Freedom Hub show, which covers a broader array of topics, sometimes gets us censored. Liberty, freedom, economics, and things going on in the world. Scroll down the page and you will find the links to the channels that our videos get posted on the following week. BitChute, Brighteon, YouTube, Rumble. And that should cover it. This is a volunteer organization operation, so we do, are appreciative. And for those of you who have bought us coffee, we thank you. I will stop the screen share and turn this over to you, Jeff, to introduce our guest on the topic.
Okay, sounds good. That was very fun, Jim. I like that. Entertaining. Well, this is a very exciting day today because, we talk a lot about health and doctors and all the rest of it. But the bottom line is you got to pay for all this nonsense. And so that's really what we're going to get into today is like kind of the blood behind all this system here is that gets this thing flowing, which is being able to cover the cost of any of your health care. So today we've got Joe Markland on, and he's the CEO of N for One, which is kind of an interesting twist on the ICHRA. And not a lot of people are familiar with that. And I want to make sure I'm reading it correctly because I always stumble over that, an acronym. It's Individual Coverage Health Reimbursement Arrangement. So it's something that got cooking under the Trump administration. And it was a different way for you to be able to pay for healthcare and break away from the stranglehold that a typical insurance company holds. And what's very liberating is for employers, because since we're kind of stuck with healthcare at work, as opposed to in the old days where you just bought the stuff, but now it's become attached to your employment, it liberates the employer from having to be tied to it in an improper fashion and helps freedom-oriented people in healthcare themselves flourish, meaning the doctors and the like, because now as an employee, I have more latitude as to where I can go. So with that in mind, we're excited to have Joe here today. So if you would, Joe, please enlighten us.
Great. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the group here. And I like what you guys are doing. You're really kind of speaking to my mantra, at least, is the key to consumer empowerment. And I happen to be, my significant other is a doctor of precision medicine. So I pay a lot of attention to what's going on in the health tech marketplace. In fact, I'm sitting here in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I work out of the MIT, the Innovation Center, where there's a lot of health tech startups going on. So I have a unique perspective because I have the financing perspective, but really getting into healthcare perspective. And I just, to age myself, I've been in the benefits business since 1986, so I understand health insurance financing. And the reason I'm doing what I'm doing today is because I'm basically saying enough is enough. It is very broken and there are alternatives. So today, I hope I could give you a different perspective on this, which combines the financing aspect of healthcare in the United States, along with healthcare in itself. Healthcare freedom starts with health financing freedom, and this is kind of the main. Without health financing freedom, you don't have the freedom to choose. I was talking to a vendor this morning. They say, why don't you go buy direct primary care for all your employees? I said, that's assuming that all the employees want your version of direct primary care. So everyone's trying to go to the employer and one size fits all. And the idea is that one size doesn't fit all. I get 100 employees in a room and, buy one thing for lunch. Are not going to have everyone be happy. So some quick facts, and I don't need to overstate these things. These are kind of the obvious, but U.S. healthcare costs are by far the highest in the world. But here's an escalating problem. Costs have gone up 59%, employee contributions 71%, and deductibles 150%. And that's over the last 10 years, according to ICHRA. This is going to have a trickle-down effect that we have not yet felt, okay, which is as deductibles go up, as employee contributions go up, over time, more people go to hospitals and doctors. What they do is they don't pay their bills. So as these things go up, there's a slight lag on the amount of bankruptcies, lack payments that we haven't seen yet. I mean, it's almost like the commercial real estate with COVID. You know, there's a lagging impact of some of the things that go on that we haven't yet seen in the healthcare marketplace. 100 million Americans have their healthcare debt. You know, $140 billion, 38% of Americans delay care. So other issues with employer-based insurance, I'll kind of rattle these things off. It's inequitable. You know, first and foremost, I don't believe that the idea of, you know, the ideas of composite premium, charging everyone the same thing, is really fair. You know, the idea of the employer charging everyone for the same thing when the employer was paying the same fee for everybody, that was designed for a world where the employer was paying for 100% of healthcare. But now you have employees paying 20, 30, 40% of the premium. And now you've got a 26-year-old like my daughter paying the same as a 60-year-old for the same care. And what happens is the 26-year-old doesn't think it's a great deal, so they opt out. So you've got this growing impact, this lagging effect of changes in the marketplace that are happening. It's a zero-sum game. You could buy the same lunch for 100 people. You could buy the same clothes for 100 people. You buy the same health insurance for 100 people. Whoever's lucky enough to buy, like what you bought for lunch is a winner. And if someone doesn't like it, they're the loser. So, and the losers are opting out. And in reality, in the basics of benefits, the whole goal is to attract and retain talent. And how can you attract and retain talent if you have a 26-year-old paying something, the same thing as a 60-year-old within a company that they never use? So the major obstacle, the major obstacle to everything is, I'll go back and say, most solutions are treating the symptoms, right? Everyone complains about the hospitals are charging too much, or the doctors are this, or there's too much money waste and all that. But in my opinion, it's not attacking the root cause, which is the tax laws. And as long as you keep on treating the symptoms, you're not going to solve the problem. So many believe that our financing system is driving up the underlying costs. I hear it from benefits brokers all the time. Is the reason health insurance costs a lot is because healthcare costs a lot. And I say, no, the reason healthcare costs a lot is because our financing system, much like college education. Why is college education so expensive? Because you give an 18-year-old who has no job and no assets a $50,000 a year loan to consume college. And colleges now become resorts with all kinds of great food. The food at my daughter's college was unbelievable, better than I eat at home. You know, so this is the root cause. And what makes the United States system unique, and a lot of people don't realize this, we are not the only country in the world where the employer gives people money for health insurance. We're the only country in the world where the employers purchase the insurance, and that is because of our tax laws. Because the only way to buy health insurance pre-tax is to buy what your employer, I'll use a term by Mike Cannon of the Cato Institute, compels you to buy. If I work for a certain employer and they charge me $350 a month for health insurance, the only way I could get that health insurance in America pre-tax is to buy whatever the employer compels me to buy. They're in total control. So the employees essentially are the puppets to the puppeteer who's making the decisions around healthcare. You talk about health insurance freedom. So change has been quietly coming. I happen to work with Mark Bordelini in a partnership relationship between 1990 to 1996. So I follow Mark. He's a very bright guy. He became the CEO of Aetna. And he gave a presentation to the Mayo Clinic in 2014 that shows the current healthcare system. It's an impossible formula to solve. You got the provider, the consumer, the employer, and the incentives are not aligned. And he says the new future of healthcare, and this was in 2014, says not too far away from now, in the next 6 to 7 years, 75 million Americans will be retail buyers of health insurance that will come to the marketplace with their own money and either a subsidy from their employer or a subsidy from their government. Now, this type of healthcare system is used in other countries. It's called the Bismarck model of healthcare, where everyone is compelled to have insurance, a la Obamacare, but they buy off private markets. And they may use their own money if they're independent wealthy. Their employer could give them money, or the government could give them money if they're destitute. But they're still buying health insurance off the private market. So you still have consumer markets, and the healthcare markets are also private markets. So essentially you have employees getting the true freedom to control the dollars. Now, Aetna went out, and Verlini made some proactive steps because he's anticipating a change in our healthcare system. And he gave a presentation to the Harvard Business Review in 2015, where he says the time detecting marketplace fault lines is the key to building the case for preemptive change. When do you change? When you see something on the horizon that says, hey, my business is flawed, it's at risk. So one of Aetna's core competencies was selling plans to intermediaries, employers, rather than to the ultimate consumers. This turned out, he called it, to be a major fault line, which is the reason Aetna sold to CVS. As he likes to say, is people going to buy individually, their health insurance individually, and healthcare in their neighborhood, a la CVS. So they take their money and go to a CVS clinic. And he basically said the shift to healthcare consumerism is unstoppable. And when asked at the Detroit Economic Council in 2019 what he thought the future of employer-based health insurance was, he says it's over. That's why we did the deal with CVS. So the government did take action. In January 2020, for the first time in 75 years, the purchase of an individual health insurance policy can be purchased on a pre-tax basis. That is through the creation of the individual coverage ICHRA. And according to the person who helped write this executive order, I would say it's an extension of Obamacare. He says our healthcare financing system is the root cause of healthcare inflation. Just like, once again, whether it's college education or the housing crisis in 2008, when you give people who can't afford loans, you give them adjustable rate mortgage, 100% loan to value, you increase buying power, you're going to increase the cost of the product or service related to that buying power. So from my perspective, having watched what's going on, this is not a random event. It is the foundation of a new healthcare system, which should make anyone who's looking for healthcare freedom happy. But it didn't go far enough. What they have to do is get the employer out of the middle. Okay, so that's when I'll say go far enough. Because right now, what an ICHRA is, it's an employer-sponsored plan. The employer has to make a decision to say, rather than buy insurance for people, I'm going to give you money and let you buy on your own. So it still requires the employer's permission to do so. But they did through executive order. The ICHRA, in its simplest terms, it's a modification to health reimbursement accounts, which essentially made the premium of an individual health insurance policy, including the premiums for Medicare, Medicare Sup, an eligible expense under a health reimbursement account. And then they raised the expense limit. So that's how the Trump administration was able to modify it based on an executive order, is essentially taking something that existed and make a slight modification. Now, what I realized, my focus is on, this is more than just a random change in the law. And part of the thinking, what employers should start thinking of, what is a great benefits program? And I'm getting back to is, now that employee costs are going up, where the employer is now shifting more and more cost, you should start thinking about, not about what the employer spends, about what the employee spends. So what is an employee compelled to pay in order to have your health insurance? So as cost shifting is going, let me give you an example of that. The current thinking in the employer market is, if I provide health insurance and I look for an alternative, and that alternative is the same price, well, I probably stick to what I have because I've done the best I can for my employees. So here's an example of a 395-person firm in Massachusetts, where their group health insurance premium was $515,000. Well, if the employer were to give people money and they were all by the exact same plan on the individual marketplace, the cost would have been $516,000. So the employer would say, why would I switch? It's the same cost. I can't do better. Well, here's why. Because while this plan is $516,000, all of these plans were less than that. They may have more narrow networks. They may have higher deductibles, but by employers choosing this one plan and saying, I'm not going to give them money, I'm essentially blocking access to lower cost plans. Because so my 26-year-old daughter may not want this may not want that plan, or may not care if there are doctors in the network or not. So that's what's the problem is. The employer is actually taking away choice from the employees. And I looked at 20 examples of employers where if they gave people money and they went to buy on the individual marketplace, this is the amount of savings. I had one employer that could save $8,000. So the amount of savings this is throwing off in 27 states, the individual health insurance market is as or more competitive than what the average employer can buy. I could get you into all the reasons around that, but I'll kind of fly through this and then we could discuss some of the stuff. But the ICHRA is not enough. ICHRA, in my opinion, is the catalyst to a change in employee benefits in general. Because up to this point in time, the health insurance dollars have been consuming too much of the money. But if you take that money and you let people spend it in a different way, there's someone coming in, you could deliver more personalized benefits model and improve healthcare. So here's one of my points. The probability of most people having 58% of Americans don't have $1,000 in the bank. Well, the probability of someone like my daughter or many people of having an unexpected expense over $1,000 is about 75% for something other than healthcare. So while an employer says, well, I want to make sure, the reason I want to buy health insurance for my employees is because I want to make sure they buy the right thing. I said, but you're not making sure they buy the right auto insurance or rent the right apartment or buy the right car. So while you buy something more expensive, you buy a richer plan, and then you compel them to pay 30%, you don't know if that 30% could be used spent better elsewhere. So the way we see a future, the ICHRA is the catalyst, but not the end game. So the idea of what we're doing, and for one, rather than the employer buy insurance, they give the employee the money, the $600, and let them go buy individual health insurance for $400 and maybe put money in an HSA or an emergency fund or pay down college debt or something else. This is essentially taking $7,400, which is the average premium for a single person, and $21,000 for a family. The employer, between employer and employee money, if they're buying family health insurance from their employer, is controlling $21,000 of what could be their paycheck in reality. And if someone's making $50,000, that's 40% of their pay. And that's really the case that's made by Michael Cannon at the Cato Institute. Now, the secondary impact of this, probably a lot of people didn't expect this because it's, this is where, having a significant other as a doctor, who's, I call the queen of precision medicine. But there's new emerging healthcare. There's advanced testing, genes, molecules, blood. There's data, there's AI. You can take a genetic test and see if you're predisposed to certain forms of cancer. So early detection of things. If I'm a 60-year-old and I'm pretty healthy, but I want to save my life. I want to live better. So I'd rather invest money in my data rather than insurance. I'd rather have a higher deductible and spend money on things that could save my life. So all these new technologies are hitting here in Cambridge and other places around the world that can identify issues before they are serious. And unless if you've been living under a rock for the past few minutes, you probably noticed the health and technology space as a bit of a, you could scan your skin, send it in every 6 months. It'll tell you whether you're getting skin cancer. Sunday Health, you can talk it to your cell phone and tell you whether you're getting respiratory disease. So all these new technologies are coming into marketplace that can help save your life. But the problem is the healthcare system is also a captive to the puppeteer, the system. Because if you have some great new healthcare technology, you've got to go to the healthcare system and to the insurer or the broker or the employer. So you may have something that could save someone's life, a tool or service or technology for the consumer. But in today's world, the awareness is created through, will the healthcare system promote it? Will the insurer pay for it? Will the broker inform their employer to get to the consumer? So the current system has many layers between new technologies and the consumers, and many are preventive in nature and not covered by insurance. So the new formula, if I say healthcare freedom, is to eliminate all the friction in the business. If you give employees control of the money, as Mark Bortolini says, because in the new world, the consumer is interested in access and quality, which this is what it does. It gives it easier access to newer inventions, but they need to control the money. So you can't have healthcare freedom until you get the employer out of the middle. And as Michael Cannon says at the Cato Institute, the United States will not have a consumer-centered sector until workers control the $1.3 trillion of their earnings that the exclusion now lets employers control. The change that could do this, the change which everyone, if they want healthcare fighting for freedom in America, should be opting for, is this. Take the ICHRA, the individual coverage HRA, and make it an ICHRA. If you take a health savings account, which is controlled by the employee, and let the employee purchase an individual health insurance pre-tax by using HSA money, then the employee. So I could then go to an employer and say, hey, rather than you spend the $600 or $700 a month on your health insurance, put it in my pay, and I'm going to run it through my HSA, and I will now control the money, because an ICHRA is controlled by the employer. An ICHSA would be controlled by the employee. Apparently 73% of Democrats, 74% of Republicans, 65% of independents. This is something everybody wants. And I will add to the equation that employer-based health insurance is less expensive for richer people. If you're making 500 grand, your health insurance premium comes right off the top. You get a bigger tax break if, through employer-based insurance, if you're making more money. So there's a lot of problems with our current system. The ICHRA didn't go far enough. So if you want a modern benefits program, we have to go to the ICHSA. An employer could take the same employer funds, give control to the employees, and I can assure you, they will spend money more efficiently, because their incentive is to live happier, healthier lives. And they could be happier, healthier, and more economically viable. So the idea of my business, N for one, is, I like to say N for one, many solutions for each person is better than one solution for everybody. The ability to take control of money and personalize the use of those funds and personalize your healthcare is the opportunity. So that's what that is my quick rundown of my view of what I consider healthcare freedom and health insurance freedom. It starts with the financing system.
Super.
Very good. It
Yeah,
was good.
thank you. Great
Let
talk.
me put in a 2-second comment real quick, Jim, before we open it up for some questions. What you're pushing for is really the ultimate solution, because kind of the way, everybody kind of wants to get it simplified or something that they can relate to. So I always usually like to use analogies. And in this instance, it would be the food court, because, say I'm going to give everybody $50 for food, but we're going to the Mexican restaurant. Well, that's great for a couple of people that love Mexican, but for the ones that don't want that, it's not going to be good. But if we go to the food court, you can get Chinese. And so in other words, everybody gets to get what they want that fits their need. Because like when you describe your daughter, she'd probably rather defray other costs and only put a smaller amount in healthcare until she got older and needed more healthcare. And of course, you're liberating the employer from having to decide which one of these do I pick for everybody, which,
Right.
they're not that smart to know what the market really wants. So,
And even at my age,
great,
right? Even at my age, I'd rather spend it on genetic testing to see if I'm predisposed to early forms of cancer or new types of blood tests. And that's just because healthcare is financed through health insurance, but it's also financed with my bank account, right? So what would I want to spend the money on?
Absolutely.
Could
For
be
those who
a
want to ask some
vacation.
questions, if you raise your hand there for us, and Jim, you want to chime in real quick?
No, I just said spend it on a vacation. Exactly.
Oh, there you.
So-
Some people would want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're already sort of down this path a little bit, because we've got our Genexi artificial intelligence health software system.
Yeah.
But then once that helps me figure out what the issue is, how can I execute? And that's where this health insurance dilemma comes into play, because in the final analysis, it always comes down to money. And of
Yeah.
course, the way the system is so jiggered, all the doctors are becoming employees of, like, the Cleveland Clinic here where I'm at, as an example, which limits their ability to be a doctor, because they're being controlled by some outside force that's not looking out for the patient. That's the last person they care about in the equation. So it is very problematic.
Yeah,
So let's see who else.
I have a question, Joe. Yeah, let
Sure.
me jump in.
Please.
So money, employers, why, my understanding or my thought is that you think the benefit managers, I mean, are there friendly favors involved, or, like, why aren't some of these better routes taken and everyone keeps going back to the same old thing? I mean, is there, money under the table or the old boys club, or what do you think some of the reasons are?
I'll be honest with you, and a lot of my friends are the insurance brokers, but they're not educating the market as to what the options are.
Yeah.
It's just, past behavior. Now, the ICHRA took place in 2000 or 2020, and then COVID hit, so there's a delay in that. But a lot of it is just awareness and old behavior. I mean, I've gone through employers, and some haven't changed. And I said, listen, this 43-year-old single woman could save $7,000 a year. Let's get her in the room and let's show her these numbers, because, I'm telling employers, you got to be better fiduciaries over your employee money, and that's what it's about. This is why my focus is not on what the employer's spending or how good of a plan I could pick, but how much you're charging people for your healthcare plan. So right now, the blockers are actually, the industry has not done a very good job in educating employers, and the HR people, in all honesty, haven't done a very good job getting educated either. And some of it is just, thinking in the old way. But I say, if you want to value your benefits program, look at how much employees are compelled to spend to be part of your program.
Well, and the employers are spending more, right? I mean, you're showing us you could be saving a considerable amount of money.
I get employers tell me, they said, the worst part about owning my own business is the medical insurance renewal.
Yeah.
Who wants to go sit in front of their employees every December and say, hey, I got to charge you more out of your pay? I mean, it is and one of the reasons I could get into more details of this, but risk segregation is the problem. A lot of people say, well, how can people individually buy health insurance less expensive than a 500 or 5,000 person firm? And the reason is when the insurance companies file their rates with the state. I'm in Massachusetts, Tufts Health Plan, they have 130,000 people in their individual risk pool. So when you buy individually, you're buying as a part of a group of 130,000 people. So on average, the individual marketplace is spreading the risk over more people, and the expenses to run an individual policy are actually less than what it costs the average employer.
What to expand on that a little, what you said earlier about them buying your auto insurance and the like, that is part of the dilemma, is breaking the whole thing away from the employer and just saying, let me just give you a raise and we'll call it a day. And then if you want healthcare or not, go buy it, and I'm not involved whatsoever. Because the real sad reality, and I've been a broker for a long time, I was at my favorite stories, I was at a tool and die operation, and the next thing you know, we're having this big spreadsheet table with a whole bunch of people in the room, and we're all debating this. And I get up and look out the window and I said, geez, I thought you guys were a tool and die operation. I didn't know you were a health brokerage firm.
Right.
And everyone laughed, because they're like, exactly, why are we even talking about this? We are not in the healthcare business. We make widgets. And so
that is
involved is silly.
Managing health risk is a misplaced responsibility, and it came by accident in World War II. It's outlived it's outlived its purpose.
Right. Well, it was never really viable in the first place, because it really kind of came about with raising price controls, expanded that, and then suddenly that was where they could get a write-off for the employee, was to provide health care, but it distorted the entire market, like you've described and shown so well. So it is pretty sad, but it's freeing up those dollars and breaking it away from employers. One of the things we've been doing with our little WOW app is where the employer just literally puts money into the employee's wallet, and then they do whatever they want with that money. Either they may not buy any health insurance, but they spend it all on dental care. Right. Or whatever that fits. It's a medical thing. And again, they know what they need better than any single person or group of people could ever hope to determine. So yeah, it's pretty frustrating. Let's see, we got any questions in the room out there? You know what? I actually think I see Pam hiding out there in the woodwork. You want to chime in a little bit about where you think this fits with what we're doing with the artificial intelligence software? If I can impose upon her.
There she is.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for the opportunity. Let me make sure my camera's good. No, I love it. I think it's fantastic. And as some of you know, I worked for both Cigna and United Healthcare in the past as well. So I think you're absolutely right in the direction that healthcare needs to go in order to get fixed, and it's the financing system that's been awry for quite some time. And like you said, the business owner cares about the numbers, but the HR person cares about her own personal copay, and so none of the incentives are aligned. So I think this approach is great, and certainly one of the reasons why we love to empower the individual and help them make better healthcare choices. As you said, maybe you want to do genetic testing, or maybe you want to go head something off and make sure that your health is better. And some other people are not going to, and that's okay too. But yeah, using AI and giving the individual not only the dollars but the choice to choose their own health plan, I think is just incredibly powerful. So yeah, thanks for the presentation. Thanks for putting something together. I think a lot of employers have found it to be either challenging or confusing to move this direction. So I like what you're doing, and I think it's going to be definitely the direction in the future. My question for you would be in regards to, because in some ways I see this a little bit as like employers used to provide a pension and then they shifted to the 401k. I kind of see healthcare going the same way, and just wondering what your thoughts are as we look down the path that healthcare costs continue to rise just due to poor health and poor health choices in individuals. How do you see that playing out for employers competing for good employees and also keeping up with the pace of inflation of healthcare costs?
Well, I will contend that once you change the dynamics of our financing, you will curtail the inflation rates significantly. Okay, so you start, if as the healthcare system starts moving towards trying to develop products and services for consumers, the whole dynamics of the underlying system will change, and that'll help drive different behavior through the whole system. So I could get into specifics, but for example, if everyone paid for their own doctor visit, then doctors would start not joining networks as much as start advertising to consumers why they're a better doctor, I guess. And from an employer's perspective, I met one here in Cambridge where I was outside the building with a broker. They said, well, this employer wants to provide the best employee benefits. I don't think they're going to change. When I got into the office and the woman says, well, we want to provide the best employee benefits, and I would imagine giving more options is better than fewer options, so let's define what's better or best. But the other part is the human side of giving employees control. When you abdicate responsibility to someone, the employer, you become less aware, and I think you start giving employees control and people start marketing towards that consumer. Yeah, this test could save your life. Then I think you'll see the market changes will help generate behavioral changes, and there'll be opportunities for companies to come in and help consumers move from an employer-sponsored model to a personalized model. If I'm a financial consultant, how do I add that part of my financial consulting practice? Hey, all of a sudden you're in control of $25,000 more than you were in before. How does that impact your financial planning?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Proof of your description there was when the HSAs first hit the scene, because I dealt with a lot of employers, and utilization went down when the employees had to spend their own money at that point. If it was free or low copay, they would use it often. And the minute they suddenly had to reach in their own wallet, even though it was money that was kind of gifted to them in that regard, they were very judicious about using it. So that definitely drives people when they have to bear the brunt of any costs, which is exactly right. That's great. But I was going to seek if we go ahead.
I would add the emergence of a changing healthcare system, obviously with video, right, or genetic testing, all that. This is kind of all happening at the same time, right? So very consumer-centric solutions and technology is going to enable the consumer to have more control and take care of things themselves.
Who do you think are the best, before Linda, you're up next, the best people or the best ways, methods, et cetera, to put this out there, to get employers to understand this, to get employees or individuals to see, oh, there's a choice here I can be making, we can be making.
Yeah, I wish I could do TV commercials on Boston television,
Okay.
in October. You know, it's somehow we got to get the message out, and it's pretty difficult.
Got it.
At this
Linda,
point.
Yes, my question is, if the digital medicine will be implemented as they try to do in Europe, and sadly, I think that sooner or later, that will be the new medicine that we're going to have. Do you think that the health cost will be reduced, or they will keep the same price as the expensive health cost as we have now? Do you expect any reduce of the cost?
Yeah, I think more, and different types of systems will exist. Like Kaiser is a hospital-owned health insurance. If you are at risk, okay, if you're going to lose more money by having someone in your hospital has colon cancer, you're going to make sure that all your clients get colonoscopies. And maybe if you're going to have all your clients get colonoscopies, you're going to reduce the price of a colonoscopy, because the way to maximize your profitability is your incentives are to keep people healthy. So I'm big into, show me a rule, show me a law, show me the incentives, and I'll tell you the outcome. So I believe that as long as we align the financing with the outcome we desire, yeah, I think it'll start to control costs, because
Okay,
we don't have a market system today.
Thank you.
There we
Thanks.
go. I was gonna see, Rick, are you still floating around out there? I think maybe we lost Rick. I was gonna tap somebody that was on the line here who has been in the trenches for a long time too.
Yeah.
I also see Rich, you're hiding out there. Have you got a little take on what we've been here chatting about today?
I do.
How did I know that?
Well, I've actually been working on a program to do this, to bring it down to one life. And it's interesting because when we put that program together for my financial coach, and that's how we picked up all those doctors, is, putting together a Fortune 500 benefit solution for these sole props. Anyway, it would be neat to be able to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of spinning right now after, there's just a lot of information here. What do you do with, pooling the risk of, that the real problem here is how do we get the uninsurable people into this platform?
I'm a believer in what they call the Bismarck model that I referenced in the presentation. There's different types of models of healthcare programs. There's obviously single payer, where the government runs everything. There's the current system that there's no one compelled to have insurance. But I believe in the Bismarck. I believe in a national healthcare system program where everyone has to be in, because you got to pay for infrastructure. So
Right.
I'm a believer in having a penalty if you waive out. So because it's just like the fire department. What would the cost be to put out your house fire if it was fee for service?
Right.
The reason it's affordable is because we're all in.
That's
so,
right.
So I believe the Bismarck system is everybody has to be in. If you're not in, we're going to take, and you're working in a job, and we're going to take it out of your taxes. You're going to pay a tax on it, but your employer can contribute. If you're destitute, it's like Obamacare today, where you're going to get a subsidy. But everyone has to be in, and if you hit 21 or whatever age and you're not in, then you're on your own. And healthcare's costs shouldn't survive bankruptcy. So you have to have the incentives for people to get in. So I believe that's the way it has to be. Now, from the insurance risk standpoint, if everyone's in the same risk pool, what you've got going on today is if I'm an employer, my incentives are to hire young, healthy people and go self-funded. And by
Right.
doing that, I'm essentially opting out of the program. And that's part of the problem today is risk segregation.
Right.
So get everyone into the individual risk pools and
Well, it's like wouldn't you say that the risk pool is like a public utility then?
absolutely.
So,
That's
but
what,
everybody can engage it at a different level. So a wealthy
Right.
person might engage the pool after $1 million. So they go get their own supplemental coverage. And then somebody who's younger or somebody who's indigent, they would have to engage the pool at the first dollar.
yeah, because we all benefit from supporting the infrastructure, right? When a pandemic came along, people said, why weren't we prepared? Well, who's going to pay for being prepared? You know, what is the healthcare capacity in a hospital when you have a pandemic? So there's certain things that, you know, we're all going to need, no different than water and electricity in the fire department. But that doesn't mean that, you know, you can't have options, you know.
Right.
We all have to have car insurance, you know. So, you know, and the way you engage the system, I'll give you an example of me. I'm practicing what I preach. I wouldn't have a primary care doctor that didn't accept my health data, for example. So I had a doctor's appointment online, and the doctor was in my upper right-hand screen. Well, I have a scale. When I step on my scale, my weight is Bluetooth to my health record. I stepped on a scale at 7 a.m. At 8 a.m., when I got on my appointment with my doctor, my weight was on the screen. He was in the upper right-hand side, and my health data was on the screen, and it showed my weight from 7 a.m. in the morning. My doctor knew how many steps I took that morning, what my weight was that morning, and I took my blood pressure at home, and he knew the blood pressure that I took at home that morning. So I'm practicing what I'm preaching here, but it cost me more money to have a doctor who's willing to engage my data. But that's what I chose.
Awesome.
What,
Very critical.
I got a question. To me, it looks like there's a split, or we need to split this system up. Because there are a lot of people, I'm one of them, that feel that first of all, the human body is energy really runs, the energy fields, as Einstein said, govern the physical part of us. So we should be focusing, as traditional Chinese medicine does, for example, or Ayurveda or homeopathy, on looking at the energy fields and the person's energetic nature, blocks, etc., to keep them healthy. So you have one, and there's new high technology available for that too. Not just, you don't have to go to an acupuncturist or somebody, but to have one area that focuses on keeping, you know, like where you can focus on your health. And then on the other side, and then you wouldn't need all the hospitalizations and all this catastrophic is good, but you wouldn't have to pay exorbitant premiums if the hospitalizations were cut in half or some large percentage. At the same time, we need that. We need some infrastructure. Sorry for that. So, but I think we need a divergence here. I mean, I know being married to a doctor, probably you're getting pushed to one side of that equation, I'm guessing. But, you know, you must talk about that. What are your thoughts on this? Any?
Well, you know, I think you have to start with a base level, right? And the base level is taking the same consumption we have today or the same outcomes. Like how do other countries have the, you know, same or better healthcare for less money? So you do have to start with a base minimum, and we haven't even done that. But it comes back to incentives, right? You know, do you penalize someone for being overweight? You know, do you penalize bad drivers? You know, what are the incentives built into the system? And right now, I don't even think that we have a base to adjust off of. You know, the current base should be finding a way to control existing costs based on current consumption. Try to modify behavior based on the incentives of that individual who wants to live happier, healthier, and longer, I guess. But you know, everybody there has to be a base level, and we don't. That is more efficient and effective than what we've got today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in 2010, New England Medical Journal and I think Lancet and a few others were talking about findings from what's that guy, Ioannidis, anyway, at Stanford or wherever it was, that, and a lot of other researchers, that up to a third, between a third and a half of medical science was flat out wrong. Now, we've still continued on with the same science and the same tests and a lot of that stuff. And you'd think in any other industry, auto manufacturing or something, if they said, wow, well, a lot of our parts aren't working right, that they would retool stuff, but we haven't retooled it. So I mean, I just see a large, I agree with what you're saying, and I love the concepts there and the financial approaches. But I just think we need a really different system or two different systems to make this work. So people are healthy and focusing on health so they don't end up, so that they live better. We all live better.
Well, I think we're accumulating medical debt and we're not recognizing it yet. We're talking about college debt. We talk about credit card debt,
That's correct.
talk about government debt. But you're going to have, as the deductibles and co-insurance and the amount of money that people have to pay out of their pocket, or that over the last 5 years, we haven't seen the real impact of that yet. And I think it's coming.
Agreed.
Yeah, well,
It comes back to what you said about breaking that money free. It's almost what's been happening with colleges, whereas they keep raising the amount of money they'll give to the potential student, tuitions rise to match. And
Right.
exactly what's happening. The hospitals know where the deductibles are going and off they go.
Right.
So it definitely gets it back to the consumer. So they make, and like you said, we're not going to figure out, and we shouldn't want to try to figure out what are those solutions. We give the money to the consumer and let them decide where to go. And guess what? People show up with different ideas, and some of them flourish and some fail, but that's how the market sorts it out. So it's very perverse incentives for sure, the way it sits.
I believe, the idea of, as I said, the ICHRA, which is also used by the Cato Institute. I've been saying that, but so is Michael Cannon from the Cato Institute. It's almost like the 401k, right? Giving people control of the money.
Mhm.
I believe employers want it. I believe employees want it. I believe the government wants it. Everybody wants it, except I'm not sure it's just the brokers, because even the insurance companies will still be in the game. They're in the Medicare game and Medicare sub. They'll just be getting money and people insured in different ways. The TPAs, the self-funded and all that may not want it. But I believe the bulk of our society would prefer this method.
do you know if
The
that's
real
policy now
catch-22.
being written up anywhere that might pass in the near future?
I'm not sure. I'm not that connected
Yeah.
to it, but I think they're who's going to start the charge to promote that. During a presidential campaign, you could go find someone who wants to run with the cause. No one's talking about healthcare.
It's like a third rail. Part of the challenge, you're pretty right about the broker, because my employers are not clamoring for anything different. So I'll keep pivoting, selling them what I've been selling them. And, we've been involved with medical cost sharing for a long time. Most brokers don't know about it and don't even want to know about it,
Right.
because no one's asking for it. So why do I want to even present it? And because it's a lower monthly cost, I'm going to make less commission. So why do I even want to broach that topic?
Yeah, and I think the whole idea of trying to squeeze the healthcare cost, putting in reference-based pricing, all kinds of negotiations, direct primary care, those are nice efforts, okay, and probably necessary, but it's not a solution for our society.
Nope.
Like
It's
frittering
just
around
no
on the
way.
edges.
Employers don't want to do that. It's
No.
Mr. Employer in the healthcare business, get over it. I think, no, I want out is what I want.
Right.
You know,
And that's really the solution. What were you saying, Rich?
Jeff, I live part-time, in Hungary, and there's two systems. You have the public system, but most of the people that I know over there, like myself, that when I go, I got an ultrasound done by a doctor in her office a couple of years ago now. It was $100. So most people are just cash pay, but they have the public system as a backdrop, but nobody really wants to use it. The only people who use it are the people who have to. But we don't have that. We don't have a backdrop here, a social backdrop, really, other than to just pass expensive healthcare onto the social system. It's a mess.
Which forces
And-
more people into Medicaid or the subsistence side of things, which
Yeah.
only keeps driving it even worse. And then their health deteriorates, so they even use it more and more as far as becoming chronically ill. So the
Yeah.
whole trajectory is a mess.
Well, as long as
And
we
which
can
is
keep
sad,
printing
'cause we
money,
got,
But
well, we've got great technology, great doctors, and we're using like the worst delivery mechanism that you can envision.
right? Well,
Hey,
printing
but you-
money,
As an organization, you got to get behind something that we think is going to work. And that's why
Right.
I presented today the ICHRA and say,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
if we
And
get
which
something,
is
it's
still
that-
perfect.
otherwise the noise, there's so much noise, it gets lost, right?
right.
Right.
Hey, Jeff, aren't the guests we're having on the show like Pam, like WOW, like, you know, a lot of these other groups, direct pay DPCs, aren't they building this system that,
It's the sad reality. Like I said at the beginning, it's about the payment mechanism. There's a lot of great solutions and tools now that are emerging everywhere, but the old style of paying for it has not changed one bit. And so we're locked into that model where most people, it's like watching just selective news channels. You only know what you get told. So without seeing all these other options, I mean, I've called so many employers, they've never heard of the concept of medical cost sharing or health share ministries at all.
yeah, we
And
need
here,
those
I'm in it,
commercials
we're in
on
it.
TV, right?
We know about it all the time. But you
Yeah.
know, the average person, they don't know very much. They're so busy going to work or following sports, they never get a chance to learn about anything past that little silo. And so all these great solutions are only knowledgeable to us sort of in the know, and nobody else has a clue until it starts to break through. But until we change that money, it's never going to break through.
Yeah, you essentially have to get the employer out of the middle. As long as you give the employer the option to maintain control, you will not fix it.
No.
So that employer in the middle, in my opinion, is the root cause.
Yeah.
And that's it. You know, as long as that exists, the problems will exist.
Right. It's
You
hard to
gotta
get people to
eliminate
fail
the-
because they're
move the
so
deduct-
acclimated.
Move the deduction from the employer to the employee and make it progressive. If you're making 50 grand, you get a full deduction. If you're making 500 grand, you get 50% of the deduction. Right now, it's the opposite. You know, that's something both Democrats and Republicans could get behind.
We're coming up on the hour. Joe, how can people reach you?
You can see that.
Yep, perfect.